In this episode, you're in for a real treat. I got my friend Muna on the line, which is a rare occurrence because she is busy.
I have to keep myself in that loop of I try to do really big things and also acknowledge that I get to do big things. That's something that my younger self, when I was growing up in Oklahoma, who had no concept of the outside world, like everything I learned was through TV and through magazines and through books, that the dreams I had, I didn't have any doubt that I would reach them.
When you listen to her story and what she does and her energy, trust me, you'll understand why I'm so impressed that I was actually able to carve out some time with her. She is a powerhouse. If you looked that word up in the dictionary, you would find Muna. And in fact, I'm pretty sure she was born that way. It is incredible when you see somebody living into their entire being, into their destiny, and from such a young age. I can't even believe the things that she's accomplished already. And when I think about what the next 5 years will look like for her, she's only going up.
The two most relevant things for me is this something that matters to me in the world, to the communities that they serve? And the second is, can I have an impact and can I have an influence?
So I hope that after this podcast, you feel inspired to maybe take some action on some things that you're a little bit nervous about. And just remember that a no is only a no. That's just 2 letters. And you just move on, try the next thing. So that's the inspiration behind Muna's story, is to just take the leap. Hi, Muna. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so glad that you're here. And we just were talking about how you were taking this event that we had done in February, where I gathered people together that I just found interesting. And you were one of them. And I had actually met you at Climate Week. I don't know if you remember that or not. I don't even remember how we met, to be honest with you.
Neither
That
do
week is
I,
such a blur.
actually. I've tried to remember it, and I think that day was a blur, that week was a blur. I have no recollection, but I know it was a good experience if it got me to show up in February.
But we also met at Soho House before that, because
Oh,
I
did
think you
we?
and I chatted. We met at your Soho House in Dumbo because we had met at the UN Goals House at Climate Week. And for those of you who don't know, Climate Week is this huge week in New York. It's all these events, all these things. And Muna, why were you there? I can't remember why you were actually at Climate Week. Can you remind me again?
So I was working with an organization, a mental health nonprofit, and it was part of a larger conversation, I think, with UNGA, or the UN General Assembly, around mental health at a global scale. So one of our partners had invited us there to be part of the conversation of getting mental health to be a top priority for the world. And so I went there for that talk, got to meet some incredible people from the World Health Organization. And in those conversations, I ended up staying a bit longer, and someone had introduced me to a few other events that were going on that day. So I wasn't even intending to go to all the different pieces. It was just the fact that there were so many inspiring, smart people who were solving real problems. And so I ended up, I think maybe that's why I don't remember all the different details, because it was just meeting great people and being like, well, this event's starting in like 20 minutes. You should join me. Or, hey, I'm going to be here in an hour. You should meet me there. And I kind of just went with the flow and really was open to the great people I could meet and things I could learn.
Yeah, I know we definitely met in between events. I think we might have gone to the same one, and I feel like it was the one where they were talking about like social media, and I think they had, is it Dr. Judith Josephs was there, and then I think somebody else was there who maybe had a partnership, I think, with
Yes,
Bad
yes.
Girls Club.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yes, 'cause they were,
Yeah,
so it was with the World Health Organization, TikTok, and Maybelline were the
that's right.
major companies coming together, and the organization I was with, we had worked with TikTok and Maybelline. And the conversation itself was, I think maybe we both probably weren't even near each other though, but we both lingered afterwards and connected from there. So yeah.
And so we met there, and then I know we connected. I don't even remember how, but I was just like, okay, she's one of my people. And then I reached out because I was going to be in New York again for whatever reason. And that's when we met at Soho House in Dumbo, and it was your birthday.
Yes, yes, which was so random because I'm really big on birthdays. I love celebrating my birthday, but that was the one year where I was so inwardly focused, and my goal wasn't to have a huge celebration, it was just to revisit who I am and who I wanna be and be very existential about it. I don't even remember how like, what we were talking about specifically, but really just about connecting and community and, um, having an impact with a small team doing big things, but yeah, it was last December, and it was I don't even know how what all the different pieces of what led up to that. I
Yeah.
have no clue, it just felt
Well, it was definitely serendipitous, definitely like a little bit of synergy. And I feel like I was so lucky last year to just all of a sudden meet all these great people, which then led to our gathering in February. And I was so tired of being at these curated events. Not that I don't love them, I do, of course. But I keep finding that the most interesting thing about someone is not what they're presenting in like the business world, right? And so that's like why I wanted to take the energy from that happy hour. And I really wanted to share that out, which is why I decided to start this little podcast. And I just want to talk about how like cool it was that everyone was having these side conversations. I think everyone talked to each other for at least 5 minutes. We were shuffling seats around and you were finding all these connections. Muna, remind me again, you went to what was your alma mater? It was in Tennessee, right?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
yes. Went to Vanderbilt, which is not a tiny school, but it's definitely not a big school, especially as in, like, considering all the other bigger schools around us. So it was exciting and rare to be at a space like that and connect with someone over the fact that we both went to Vanderbilt, which was super cool that that group of people, I had never met them, but we all were able to bond, um, in different ways.
Well, I think that happens a lot. I feel like when you find like-minded people, I don't know what it is, but you just get drawn together. That's been my experience at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
So, what are you up to lately? Oh, and first, I was going to say before we jump into that, I'm speaking with Muna, and I am so excited to have you on because here is my impression of you.
Oh,
And it
no.
is that you, I know you're going to laugh because I just think you're such a powerhouse. And I remember you saying, as I met you around your birthday, and you're like, I have this 5 year plan and I've done it and I'm trying to figure out the next steps. And I was like, cool, I have a 5 minute plan and I'm always late. And so like, and then I met you again in February and you were like, I think I was navel gazing. I'm like, I don't think you were. You're so like existential. And I love it.
I can't believe I said that out loud. True, I did think that, like, come February, I was like, "Wow," just, like, introspection can be a blessing and a curse.
But either way, I loved both sides of Muna, like your introspective side and then like your self-critical side. It's so funny. It was like you were like giving yourself like you were your own therapist. Like
That's a lot of how I tend to live my life and how I tend to approach the world, and I just actually I find it so hilarious that I was like, I even said that out loud that I was like, I think I was just navel gazing, like, 'cause that's what I have to keep myself in that loop of, I try to do really big things and also acknowledge that I get to do big things. That's something that my younger self, when I was growing up in Oklahoma, who had no concept of the outside world, like, everything I learned was through TV and through magazines and through books, that the dreams I had, I didn't have any doubt that I would reach them, but I it didn't always feel like it was an obvious, endpoint, so now that I'm in that endpoint, I am getting to do these big, exciting things that is always so top of mind, that I'm so aware of that, but then every now and then, I'm kinda like, "Wait a minute, take a chill pill, life is just life, we're all just humans, we all are just moving through, each day, each week, each month, just trying to get by and to survive in many ways. So I kinda had that push and pull, and December was very much a time. It was my birthday, it's the end of year, all these other, end of the quarter, thinking about, big things, and by February, it was kind of probably pushing it, hitting it like the pedal to the metal. And I'm like, "No time to think, just do, live life."
all those plans you made in December, you know how to like be responsible for.
Exactly. So I'm like, "Take hold up, let's take a step back."
Okay, so let's talk about, and I remember when we were chatting, like you told me your story of just like growing up and like what you thought you wanted to do and how you ended up in New York. And I love your story. So go way back, your little self, like what did you think you were going to be when you grew up? And how on earth did you get to being the person that you are who does like everything and does it so well?
I feel like I've told this story a million times. It's always slightly different versions. So it I'm gonna try to keep all the main stuff in, otherwise it can take, like, 2 hours. But I will say the biggest thing from my youngest self was there were 2 parts of me that didn't quite go together, which was, like, the STEM science side and then also the business
Yeah.
side. Um, I was really good at science. Both my parents are science STEM people. My dad was a doctor. My mom had a degree in biochemistry, and I just knew that was important to me and my family, and that was kind of even just socially understood to be impressive, to
Yeah.
be good at science and math. But I also loved business, and I loved fashion, and I loved magazines, and I loved reality TV. So at the same time as I was taking, like, AP biology and doing these, science and math fairs, I was, like, starting these businesses on the side and trying to, like, get friends and friends of friends to help, like, create things and sell them and set up all these different, businesses. Um, as early as I think I was 10 years old in the 4th grade, I got an award from my teacher for having the most organized desk, and so I ended up charging people 25 cents to organize their desks for them. So it's just like this kind of business side of me that always existed. And by the time I was in high school, I kind of had a bigger, broader perspective of the world and got to learn about some startups and small businesses that really impressed me. And back then, you could find, like, a CEO's email address from Google. You could DM a brand, and they would respond
Yeah.
back from, like, the actual
Yeah.
team. So I started reaching out to brands I thought were cool or that were launching and sharing my thoughts and opinions, and I had a blog at the time, and I write about companies that I wanted to notice me. And that kind of was the beginning of me consulting, if you will, as a 17-year-old, and I was too scared to tell them how old I was, so I didn't sign any contracts. I was like, "I'll do it for free," because I knew I'd have to have my parents sign it if I was under 18. And so I was kind of doing that, and I was kinda doing it on the side. I didn't want my parents to know about it while I was simultaneously, applying to schools and trying to, you know, get into, like, a pre-med program and get an MD, PhD,
Yeah.
chemical engineer. Um, so kind of like my the childhood version of myself, and then eventually, when I got to college, I was lucky enough to have some mentors who looked at me really honestly and told me, "I don't need to have a PhD and an MD and an MBA just to work in the business world. If I wanna start a beauty brand, I can. If I wanna be a consultant, I can." And so that led me to figuring out what I was good at and what I loved, and that was consulting for brands that were in the science world or were doing really impactful things and meaningful things. And when I graduated, that was kind of the filter I used. Who was doing important things, who was making a difference in the world, and who was supporting the businesses that I love most. And so that got me into business strategy consulting, specifically for early stage startups and nonprofits. But it started from me as a kid, trying to create a bunch of businesses while also still getting all the good grades so my parents wouldn't look at me funny.
Oh my God. I love that your story is like, yeah. So I was hiding from my parents that I was actually consulting these corporations. Like I was hiding from my parents that I was dating this guy in a band. Like not that my I so I'm like, I definitely had my own. I think I truly believe that if you are like an entrepreneur, you are born an entrepreneur. Like you, that drive, like that skill set, that constant, like, okay, how can I like make some money off this? The hustle, like that is a genetic trait or something. I'm not sure. I definitely have that too, but I was not nearly as driven as you were, that's for sure. And the fact that you were like, oh, if my parents find out,
I
like, what kind of companies? Like, who were these companies? Can
and
you say?
and it's what's even crazier about the whole scenario to me, is well, one, I actually ended up finding out later on that my dad had been reading my blog, and he had told me, he's like, "Yeah, I didn't wanna say anything, but you also sound so much like an adult. Like, do they know you're a child when you're, like, giving these recommendations?" But I I have always had a soft spot for small businesses and early stage startups. I wrote my college admissions essay on the importance of shopping in a local economy and supporting up and coming businesses. So a lot of the businesses back then I didn't realize were going to be as big as they are now. And so one of the businesses that I love but no one had heard of that I got to do a small project with was Warby Parker, which back then
No way.
was like it was their first year, maybe their second year, and they had just done a really cool collaboration with Karlie Kloss, who was famous for sure, but not, household name, married to like politician Karlie Kloss. And so it felt like this small little thing I was doing. And then now looking back, I'm like, wow, 17-year-old me was writing about and emailing back and forth with Warby Parker without telling my parents. So
I just need to like process that for a second. Who are some other brands? Like now I'm curious. If one was Warby Parker,
so at the time, so the ones that when I was still in high school, also Glossier, which again was real, they had just, like that was like the peak time for a lot of these brands,
yeah.
uh, that I
You're like, yeah, I was just consulting Glossier and Warby Parker when I was 17. It's
yeah,
fine.
and the thing
Like,
is, it wasn't even, and back then it also wasn't even consulting, like, right, in today's day and age, how we view consulting and how freelance has become this really big thing, I think was bred from an era of the internet where people could kind of create anything and everything.
yeah,
So back then, it was like bloggers who wanted to do more than just place posts, right? There was a time, like this was like pre-Instagram even, or early Instagram, where you were given a product or given a press release and told to write about it. And then there were a few of us who would email back and say, well, I didn't love this product and here's why, or I really loved this, but you should, maybe tweak this, or, oh, if you do this for the next launch, this would be really cool. And just giving our opinions. And this was, you know, sometimes people were consulting or calling it that, or funneling it into an agency, but a lot of times it was more so just to be able to develop deeper relationships with the companies. So with me doing that with Warby Parker, I ended up reaching out to them because they had reached out to me to write about this new collection, and I wrote back to give some thoughts about when they do a next launch or release, and so they kind of looped me in to be able to support and amplify that, the next collection that they did. Same with Glossier with, I think I did a review of every product they had released, which was only 4 at the time, and I think how many opinions I shared about the marketing and positioning maybe piqued their interest, I have no idea. But yeah, it was a different time. I feel like consulting is just so much more official now, uh
yeah.
and I think I would even say I use the word consulting because it's easy to understand, but back then it was more collaborations. Like you were sharing opinions and it wasn't as precious as having a 10-page brief and a full presentation.
Yeah, I kind of miss those days actually.
Yeah, and it was kind of the wild, wild west too, because it was like
Yeah.
you could really get into anyone's inbox, and by the time I was in college, I was able to work through an organization I was part of because I was a member of her campus, which is a pretty large, um, college-focused, like, blogging website, but the cool thing that I got to do while I was there was that, my university was at risk of, like, kind of, like, losing our chapter, and I reached out to the national office and said, "Hey, I think if we're gonna make this work, we have to kind of reconfigure it and rebrand it and reposition it, on campus for it to be attractive to the students." And so I got to spend 6 months kind of repositioning and rebranding it for specific to our student body, and so through them, I got to partner with these huge brands and kind of use that to attract a new audience and position us really well, and that was when I got to do stuff with the New York Times and Coca-Cola and Garnier and really, be a 20-year-old coming up with these strategies to, um, amplify these huge brands, but also at the same time um, market to young people and figure out what they care about in this specific market at this specific time in the world. So yeah, that was kind of the evolution of that, and I look back still and am in awe of those opportunities that I got at such a young age.
Yeah, I'm impressed. But part of it too is that I think sometimes the beauty of youth is that you just don't know otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Like you just, no one, you haven't had the experience of being told enough that you're just like, well, why can't I do that?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you said earlier.
And you also I think and I still have it, I think, quite a bit, but what I definitely had when I was younger was, why wouldn't it work out? Like, why would
Yeah.
it not be great? Like, it just was so
Yeah.
right, it wasn't necessarily, an entitlement, but it was this sort of confidence that if I want it and I work hard for it, I'll get it. And so, a lot of my friends at the time, especially when I was in college, were pre-med students. They were engineers, they were math majors, and they just didn't get why I was, skipping these traditional college things to put on an event with the New York Times. I'm like, "No, it's gonna make sense. Like, I'm gonna have the best career in the world in 20 years because of this." Like, I just know it. I just really know it. And I didn't even have like, I was so naive. I didn't even think to be nervous or to hedge those bets.
That's amazing. And I think part of it, your intuition is just like so strong. How have you protected that? I wonder, like, when people think about making those choices and you're like, well, I just didn't think otherwise. Like, to me, that just says that your intuition is like, you've never had it. It doesn't sound like it's been dulled or you've been encouraged to ignore it before. It sounds like you've been able to really protect that.
That's where the navel gazing comes in, and that's where, like, the introspection the extreme self-awareness to a fault is. Um, I so, this is gonna sound so ridiculous, but I credit it to my love of taking, like, personality quizzes. So in
Doesn't sound
terms of,
ridiculous.
like, BuzzFeed to Myers-Briggs to Clifton Stra whatever it is, like, 17 magazine, this pursuit of understanding of self, in order to create a framework to make decisions off of, I kind of overly depended on a quiz to tell me what I should buy or what I should or what I should do for a career, and it wasn't always for me just to do what the quiz said, but it was more so to get the response and then check in with myself of, "Does this feel right or does it not?" And that's all I really have to do. Um, and I wasn't aware I was doing it back then, but now that's the process I use, and I think that is what honing and protecting your intuition is, um, checking in with yourself and just knowing, "Does this feel right or not?" And the best way to get a whole list of things to use that framework on is to take a personality quiz, to look at your
Yeah.
CoStar, to look at your, or CoStar, the astrology app, which I use all the time of like, "Does this is this how I want my day to go or not?" And those small points of practice allow me to implement it at work and with my family and with my friends of, do I actually like this? Is this very me? Will this work out? Um, and then pairing that with one of my favorite, affirmations or phrases is future outcomes, are best determined by past performance. So the fact that I've done it before and it worked out, that I trusted my gut, that I believed in myself and it worked really well, allows me to keep doing that over and over again because there's that pattern recognition within myself.
Hi, thanks for listening and for joining the salon. Next week, you're going to have the best time meeting my friend Laura Ronzato. So make sure that you subscribe and that you are tuned in because she has some great stories to share. I think you're going to leave the conversation feeling a little bit more hopeful about the state of the world. All right, now back to the conversation. That's amazing. So when you say that, and I think what I want to know then is, when have you been disappointed? And what have you done about that? What is the reverse of this?
Oof, I feel like also all the time. I maybe the most important trait of all is to be optimistic. I'm a cautious optimist, veering a little bit on realism, but generally speaking, that the best is always the best, but the worst is never the worst, and never taking things um, too harshly. Because when I think about when when I've been disappointed, nothing comes to mind, but I definitely know it happens. I can Maybe I'm just blocking it out in my memory, but it usually doesn't stick because it doesn't stick in my memory because it doesn't stick in the actual experience. I think maybe this is a good question. When have I been disappointed? Oh, I mean, I have worked for myself for most of my career, which means I very, very rarely apply have ever applied for a job. Um, but there was a job that I thought was a dream job, when I was first graduating that I applied to, and I didn't get past the first round interview. And that was disappointing, not particularly because I didn't get past the first interview, but because of what I believe to be what caused them to say no. And it was the last question they asked in the interview was, "What are your salary expectations?" Which I have a belief that entry-level employees, that's not quite like, you have a budget, you know what it is.
I hate that
They
question.
also they have no concept of the workforce. When you're talking to, 21, 22-year-olds,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
not
think
fair.
it's a great question at, that stage and that age. Um but they asked me that question, and I had just moved to New York, and I had done the math based on what it costs to live in New York and what I understood it to be, and so I gave a number that to me sounded really practical, and they literally laughed me out of the room and they said, "No one's gonna pay you that much," which fair enough, I learned what entry-level salaries were, in marketing jobs in New York, but I think the disappointment came from the fact that I did all that I thought I was supposed to do, which is do
Yeah.
my research, have really strong math of it, give the explanation, come with conviction, be super aligned with that company and the brands that they represented and who they consulted for. It felt like all the alignment and all the due diligence, and I left embarrassed and feeling as if I didn't belong. So that was disappointing because I just feel as though I didn't realize or know that, just because you want it really badly and you do the work doesn't mean you're gonna get it. And so that maybe was the most salient example or experience, but disappointment oftentimes is swiftly followed by great joy in my life, so I can't really even complain about or even remember, the most disappointing moments.
No, I appreciate that story a lot though, because I think that I appreciate that you did say that you felt a little embarrassed. Like those are the feelings that I hate feeling the most, right? And so hearing like you've done all these things, you've worked with all these brands, but you still feel those like incredibly human feelings that I quickly also want to move on from is really helpful. And I think that especially when I think over all the things that you've done. So like tell me, like, how could you ever even feel embarrassed for a second? Actually, really helps me because I feel that too. And I've definitely made mistakes. And then you look back and you're just like, oh my God, like, what was I thinking? But I also love that it came out of a place of just being kind of naive. And then you're like, oh, well, like, oh, I'm just going to do 15 other amazing things. So, like, honestly, thank God you didn't take that job because if you had, like, when did you get in with okay, so on your LinkedIn profile, we've got Sad Girls Club, which is why I think what originally brought you to the Goals House.
Yeah.
And how did you get into that? That is such a great organization. Tell me
Yeah.
a little bit more about Sad Girls Club and how that became. Oh, and I was going to say too, really quickly, you also know one of our partner agencies, Daily, because of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was just talking to them the other day. I'm like, oh, you know my friend Muna. And so how did that all come to be?
So, essentially, what it all started actually with that one dream job that didn't work out, because I had made a list my senior year of college of companies that I would consider working for, and it was a pretty short list. It was 12 companies, I believe, but the company that I really wanted to work for wasn't hiring. So I actually kind of applied for that job very randomly, when I didn't need a job in that moment, but I had an opening and I didn't get it. Um, but that experience taught me that I need to maybe have to put more effort into finding a job than just, like, wanting it really bad and showing up. So I made a commitment to myself, to apply to 1 job a week that was on my list, and then by the time the opportunity that I was in at the time ended, then if I hadn't gotten a job, then I would apply to one every single day and just do a job a day. Those numbers don't make sense, especially not in this environment, but that's what I told myself. But the first week I applied to a job, that's the job I ended up getting. So it
Yeah.
didn't I only ended up applying to one other job there. And in that job, I was at Style House, which has now been it's now under a new name called Sinistry Capital.
Yeah.
But it was an opportunity where it was consulting, but also philanthropy and also investing. So being able to see all three sides of those industries allowed me to kind of look at how I could support and help organizations more broadly. And Elise, the founder of Sad Girls Club, had put up a private job posting looking for board members. And I had messaged her and said, I think I'm a bit too young to be a board member, but I would love to support you and help and volunteer. So we met in person for coffee. And she said, I don't think you're too young. I think you would be perfect. This makes a lot of sense. And so we actually met in February 2020. And then the next month, everything kind of
Yeah.
stood still. So
Yeah.
we kind of reevaluated what kind of support she needed and how I would help. But that was kind of the beginning of my work with Sad Girls Club and me joining that organization. Um, and it was really just because I was in an environment at Style House that pushed me to view myself as not my age, but my experience level. And I got to do a lot of things that I don't think many people at 22, 23 would have been able to do. And that is what ended up putting me in a position by the time I was 24 to leave and start my own consultancy.
Yeah. So in between that, you've got, oh, Sad Girls Club. Okay. And who is Elise? Remind me again.
So Elise is the founder and CEO of Sad Girls Club.
Okay.
So I started with just offering to volunteer. And then when the pandemic happened, I was kind of just volunteering where I could. In the work I was doing at Sinistry Capital, or at the time Style House, I was consulting for different organizations on where they would allocate their philanthropic dollars or where they would donate to. And I was very often referring Sad Girls Club to a point where I had reached out to Elise and the Sad Girls Club team and said, "Hey, what you all are doing is really amazing. A lot of companies want to partner with you. I think that you all are, punching below your weight. You can really do something special. I want to be able to support and help you guys grow and have an even bigger impact." So that's where it was almost like a dual. Like I was partnering with them for my client's behalf, but then also working with the organization to ensure that anything that my clients were doing with them had an even bigger and broader like impact on the world and on the communities that they served. Eventually, when I left that consultancy to start my own, it was paired with Sad Girls Club needing additional support. They were doing such incredible things. They had just launched their free counseling for anyone in the world to be able to attend, and it had a huge, huge response of people who were using it, especially while we were all stuck at home. And so being able to do my own thing allowed me to work with them more hands-on. And then eventually over time, I got more involved and was doing more things. And then in my final year there, I stepped down from the board and stepped into the role of executive director to help push it towards its next phase of growth and influence on the global scale.
Yeah. So what does Sad Girls Club do? Can you give us like a brief overview of Sad Girls Club?
So, Sad Girls Club is a nonprofit organization that is rooted in education, access, and resources. And mental health oftentimes is talked about from a very clinical, very science way, whereas with Sad Girls Club, our mission and approach was it as a lifestyle. That good mental health, especially for young women of color, which was our primary audience, can be in hanging out with your friends. It can be getting fresh air. It can be having a really healthy work environment. But it can also mean talking to a therapist. It can also be getting group counseling. It can also be, you know, getting medication and having access to that. So for us as an organization, our job was to meet our community wherever they needed us. So that could be hosting hikes for people to show up. It could be group counseling. And then most recently in 2022, we had launched a therapy scholarship where we paid
That's
outright for a
cool.
year of people's therapy. So it was a 360 approach, and mental health at the time when Elise founded the organization in 2017 was hard. It was not where we are now. It's such a different world and a different landscape, in part the work that Sad Girls Club did to destigmatize mental health and mental wellness. And if you go to their Instagram account, you can even see that it's bright colors, it's funny,
Yeah.
it's culturally relevant, and it's not always, a hotline or a if you're feeling, down, here's what you it's really is about the real world, real life ways that mental health shows up in young people.
Thank you again for tuning into these podcasts, these stories. And one of the reasons why I get to tell these stories is because of my own career, which is with Shimmick. We match really great companies to really great agencies. And over the last 14 years, we have come across some really incredible people doing really cool things. But mostly, we get to help everyday people too that are just looking for the right PR firm, right marketing agency, right advertising agency. And we're here to help. We want to make your agency search so much easier because we've already done the search for you. We have over 350 agency partners, and they're all talented. And most importantly, to me, they're all ethical. And also, we're free to you, the company. Our agencies are the ones that pay us, so it doesn't cost you anything to give us a phone call. You don't need to get your CFO involved. You don't need to get finance involved or whoever is doing that for your company. You can pick up the phone or send us an email, and we can give you kind of the state of the industry, what's trending, and go over some ideas for who might be a good fit. Now that I've shared that with you, let's get back to the conversation. I love that. And I do love the website. It's really fun. And then they had a partnership with what cosmetic company was it again?
It was Maybelline, yes.
Maybelline. That's
We
right.
partnered
That's
with
right.
them for, I mean, years before I had even come on board. I think it was Saggers Club's earliest partner, and that's what brought me to the UN that day that we met. And Maybelline as a brand has approached not just mental health, but philanthropy and impact in a way that so few companies have been able to replicate, and their level of investment and authenticity. And so that partnership with Maybelline took so many different forms, from hosting of in-person events, digital events. We did make unders versus makeovers when we were, having people show up and show them what, I don't really love the term like real beauty, but what you can look like if you don't choose to wear, a full face. We were partnering with them on TV commercials and podcast episodes, and the different therapy scholarships that we had and the counseling that we offered. It really was the most comprehensive way that I've seen any partnership take place that I've been a part of, or just that I've seen out in the world. And I'm no longer with Sad Girls Club, but
Yeah.
even just seeing the ways that Maybelline continues to support their work and just the mental health space in general, um, has been so exciting for, like, the longevity of what can be done when you really, invest in something meaningfully.
I love that you have already left a legacy. And then fast forward to now you have your consultancy, and I remember you had to jet off to go do an event in February. So I definitely want to hear about that. Also, you have information on funding and all of those things too. So I feel like you definitely do not let the grass grow under your feet. And I think it's important to talk to you about your impact lens because it seems like anytime you shift or anytime you take on a new project, it is very impact driven over anything else and whether or not it connects with your values. So after Sad Girls Club, when did you work with was it Black Beauty Club?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
yes.
So a lot of my work overlaps with each other because the two most relevant things for me is this something that matters to me in the world, to the communities that they serve? Does it have some sort of impact and influence? And the second is, can I have an impact and can I have an influence? And that is why I focus on early stage startups and nonprofits. I think it was something that I've always been passionate about, but I couldn't quite put my finger on that being my niche until fairly recently. And as someone who is passionate about companies and heavily invested in companies and organizations emotionally, I end up being involved with a lot of the companies I end up working for far before our contract even starts. So the Black Beauty Club, which actually launched in 2020, I was one of the initial members. I went
Okay.
to their very first digital event to the point where
Yeah.
I eventually ended up advising them years later. Same with Sad Girls Club of in 2020. Um, Reaching out to Elise to volunteer and support, and then becoming executive director in 2023. And so with Black Beauty Club, Sad Girls Club, those overlapped, and the work always feeds into each other. And in terms of the, I guess, lens that I approach it to my clients that they understand, is that my job is to make whatever you do be 10x whatever you want it to be, whether that's in revenue, whether that's in the influence and impact, whether that's in the size of the organization. Um, I want to make things bigger and better. And impact to me can mean a lot of different things. Just as funding can mean a lot of different things. The nature of early stage means that funding is always on the table in order to have
Right.
impact. So that can be grants, that can be revenue, that can be donors, that can be investors. And then in terms of impact, that can be the more traditional, um, I would say, what we think of nonprofits, but it can also be just being an example to others to be able to do what you're doing as a CEO, or setting new standards for the industry of how to formulate a product or how to, you know, launch a new category. And that to me is as impactful sometimes as, solving whatever huge, magnificent issue was on the news that day.
Well, and you know what? Like those big issues only get solved in those tiny little steps. And frankly, what I love about you too is that you work in beauty and in fashion. And I love those things too. And sometimes it feels like if it's not like, I don't know, kind of painful or like the mental health is so important and these things are important. Like it's important to hold on to, I think the things that make a culture are beautiful things, especially nowadays when everything seems so bleak. It almost feels frivolous, but at the same time, to me, it's like, okay, well, I am going to put on my lipstick. I am going to do these things because for it's like a little act of resistance every single day to just be like, no, I'm going to choose to do this for myself. And just not give in to just being sad like
Yeah,
about the state of the world.
it's I suffering does not have to be the default.
Yeah.
Suffering is part of the human experience. To what extent it should be part of the human experience, I think should be debated and curbed on a global scale. But
Yeah.
the idea is that one, can't eliminate it entirely, but also you don't have to live in it. Um, and I say that also from someone who, like, lives in New York and, you know, and for most Americans, that there's an opportunity to look beyond ourselves and look beyond what's in front of us to realize that it can be putting on some lipstick. It can be watching a funny video. It can be having a good conversation with a friend. The number of times I tell people that some of the best medicine I could ever have is just getting on the phone with one of my best friends and having a 10-minute conversation. Granted, no conversation I ever have is only 10 minutes, but that's all it takes for it to be a mood shifter. Having a really good meal, having a very nutrient-rich meal, being able to see trees. I mean, again, I live in New York, so having moved to a neighborhood that has trees in it was so different from when I was living in Manhattan where there was concrete everywhere. Um, so I I feel like there's a narrative shift around what it means to have an impact and do good work, but not have to sit in the suffering. Because people who do impact work, as you, I'm sure, have also experienced, it can be really devastating. It can
Yeah.
be so emotionally heavy, and I think there can sometimes be some pride, in feeling the suffering when you are dealing with others who are suffering, but you as the outsider, you as the support system, you you don't have to, convince yourself that suffering is an essential piece in order to care.
Yeah. I love that. That is such a good point. And I think that it's an important point too, because I think that honestly keeps people sometimes from making an impact because they're like, I can't take that on. They don't want to take on all of that emotional like weight. And it's, you don't have to. And you don't have to all the time.
Y Not only do you not have to, I think there is a healthy level of emotional, compartmentalization that you have to have. So I have 2 sisters, both of whom are doctors, and it's been really interesting as sisters as we talk about all of our jobs have some level of, like, life and death to it, or these big impacts that they have on the people that we're working with, and how we feel as though we care really, really deeply, especially maybe more so than the average person in our field would, but we are able to set up those systems and bifurcate where that shows up so that we can still keep going and do and have even more of an impact. And it's a conversation I think that I wanna have more times on a larger scale because I would even go as far as to say right now, and maybe over the past couple of years, since 2020 when, you know, a lot has changed in the geopolitical world and in the US, but I would say I'm probably less emotionally invested in the good and bad of the world than most people I see, but I'm also doing more. I'm doing more than the
Yeah.
average person, right? It's so much easier to donate here, show up here, give your expertise, volunteer your time, advocate, call, influential executives and representatives when it becomes a habit, it becomes part of your everyday life, and it's
Yep.
not tied to this deep emotional pull. I am not calling this person to advocate because I feel so deeply emotionally attached. I'm calling them because I'm supposed to and it's good and it's going to work. This is how change happens and that's it. And if like there's more of that that needs to be, had and discussed to get people into action because I think that the level of emotional investment people believe they need is is off base to what's actually needed.
That's so good and so true. And it's a perfect segue into what you're doing now. So keep in mind, we've only been talking about 2020 to 2025, which is half a decade, but but right now, so tell me a little bit about what you're doing in your consulting and how you're talking about funding. I think that's to me one of the most interesting things that you've done as someone who also works with VCs, startups, entrepreneurs on a regular basis. And there's so many hopes and dreams attached to it, and then there's different ways to secure funding and like it or not, money is what makes things happen. So, how are you doing? What are you doing today? And tell me about that.
Yeah, and can you tell I operate in 3, 5, and 10-year cycles? Like, that's how my brain
You
thinks.
sure do.
Everything is structured in that way. Um, so, yeah, and to that point, I think of funding in those cycles. Investor trends and funding trends are very real. I think that, we often view finance or anything super analytical as stagnant and creative or more human-driven things as fluctuating. But the world of venture capital, has tides, and so the work I'm doing right now is I think we're actually starting on a new 3-year cycle, is about I would say survival is a big word I'm bringing up, and it's maybe sounds
Yeah.
a little bit dismal, but the idea is that, first of all, reality is reality, and the way funding is happening and who is being funded and how much they're being funded is is not looking good for the majority of people trying to have an impact in the world. Um, but that's okay. I believe that any organization that should exist should be able to expand and contract. So the first things I'm thinking about for the clients I'm working with, which are predominantly early stage organizations. So the majority of my clientele right now is pre-launch. So they aren't even out in the world. They're in stealth. Um,
And can we pause right here, really super quick? So, first of all, what is the name of your consulting
oh,
group?
so my consultancy is called MKD. It's a play on my first and last name. So
Yeah.
um, the first initial last name. And I also have, my own like under Muna, I would say I do some individual advising, but they feed into each other all the time.
Yeah. So I'm Katie, and and then like give me an example of some of the companies that you're working with, just so I know, because there's so many different areas.
So the clients I'm currently working with, one of which is called Sanctum. It's going to be coming out of stealth in a couple of weeks, actually, and it's a community and membership platform specifically for Black wealth holders or wealth builders to help them realign what wealth means in
Oh,
this.
that is so cool.
So I like to kind of tell the story, give the perspective of how I approached the work and ended up working with the founder was an experience that I feel like I've seen in my life and that, she had seen as well, which is that there are people who grew up with an idea of what success looks like. And it was almost always a dollar amount or a specific amount of wealth. But then you
Yep.
get there and it's like, okay, well, how are your relationships and your friendships? How was your physical health? How was the environment you're in? So it's an organization that is taking folks who maybe have all that they could possibly ask for in terms of money, but they wanna spend that money doing good in the world and instead focusing more on their spiritual wealth or their social wealth and, building deeper relationships and bigger impact in that way. I'm also working with a lot of different beauty and wellness brands that are product based, and even launching in this market, in this world versus what it was like to launch a product in 2015 or 2020 is different. And in working with nonprofits as well. I mean, actually, even, Mary that I met through you in
Yes,
February,
Mary is
of
amazing.
getting to help and support, her nonprofit and how different that looks because it's a nonprofit that's focused on providing educational opportunities for refugees. That looks different right now in 2025.
Yes, it
Um,
does.
and and how it will for the next few
Yeah.
years versus if it, were a couple of years ago or even a decade ago.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I am so grateful that you carved out the time. Also, it's just good catching up with you because I feel like if I blink, you're somewhere else and like on to the next, and whatever impact that you're going to be making. But I love talking to you. And you always make me feel so inspired and like my own little corner of what I'm doing. But I also just wanted to find out what you were up to. So if people like you're targeting right now is your target audience as far as like your consulting is, are they all impact driven initiatives or is it most companies in general? Any company?
I would s I mean, oh, I hesitate to say impact driven because I think that some people think of that in only one way.
Yeah.
It's just any company that's at either an early stage or an inflection point. That's maybe the biggest thing is the stage that you're at. You could have been around for 10 years, but you're at like on the precipice of a challenge or a success. Or you can just be in your first like 3 years of operating. So that's really the big thing. And then the second thing would be, do you feel like your business matters beyond just selling products, just selling
Yeah.
tickets, just getting clients? If it matters more than that, then you're probably an impact-driven business.
I love that definition. And I feel like you've kind of gone full circle in a way. So you started by reaching out to companies with your opinion on things and like how they could do it better. And here we are. You're being paid to
Yeah,
give your opinion on things and how they could do better.
yes, exactly. Yeah, and then now I just launched a newsletter earlier, a few months ago, and I titled it "I Have Thoughts," and I didn't even realize, but I
I
had a thing
love
come
that.
up on, which is just 'cause I say that all the time, "I have thoughts," but I had a kind of a memory, I think, whatever it is, on Instagram show up from 9 years ago, and it's me posting, "I have thoughts." I saw
Well,
something.
you literally just said you're, like, in 3, 5, and 10-year cycles,
So,
so
yeah, so it's just
that's very
so
accurate.
yeah, it's if anything, I'm, like, incredibly consistent. I've always had thoughts. I'm quite opinionated, and I do my best to share opinions alongside with actionable ways to implement.
If you're and then we'll close the conversation because I know clearly you're so busy, but if your sisters were sitting here with me with the I have opinions, like, what would they say? What would they like, what was
I
it like growing up with you, or what is their opinion of you?
So I have 2 sisters and 2 brothers. I know what my brothers would say. My brothers hate it. They're also the youngest. There's that too, as an older sibling. Um, I think growing up, a lot of people it was the opposite of an asset. It was, to my detriment, versus now I think my sisters would respect it and value it, and I actually think I have the closest relationships with my family because they come to me for their opinions for opinions about anything from dyeing their hair to what job they should apply for, what offer they should take. So I think I've become, like, their own personal consultants.
And you're like, "See, I have thoughts." Like, they
Well,
come back to you.
I feel like, yeah, maybe when I was, like, 10 and demanding, that they listen to my every single thought on their outfits, maybe not. But now I've gotten a bit more tactful and a bit more actionable, and it feels
Alright, and do you have a nickname in your family?
I don't actually. Do I don't. I don't. I don't.
Okay, there you go. I figured you might.
My dad had a nickname for me, but it was like I mean, when I was really young, they used to call me Commander in Chief because I was so
Oh, well, there you go.
it was more like it was definitely to poke fun at me because I was really opinionated and really demanding.
I mean, yeah, that fits. That's so
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
All right. Muna, thank you so much for being here with me today. I am so excited to share this conversation, even if I just listen to it myself again, because you said so many really great things. And I hope to catch up with you in person soon.
Likewise, let me know next time you're in New York.
I will. I have a list of dates, so I'll make sure to get you those. And if people want to find you, how can they find you?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn or Instagram, both of which are my first and last name, Muna Ikedionwu. And then also on Substack, my newsletter, I have thoughts, dot, 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 for all my opinions about consumer companies and nonprofits and politics and finance.
Oh my God, I love it. I will make sure to link all of those too. But yeah, thanks again for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you letting me get on my soapbox and rant about all the things that I care
I
about.
love your soapbox. I'm here for your soapbox.